Election 2018 AETN Debates is provided by AARP Arkansas.
Hello again, everyone. We resume debate week here on AETN with the race for Lieutenant Governor of Arkansas. In alphabetical order, the nominees are Anthony Bland, the Democratic Party nominee, Frank Gilbert, the Libertarian Party candidate, and Tim Griffin, the incumbent and Republican nominee. The candidates will be questioned by a panel of Arkansas journalists: Rusty Turner of the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette, Jesse Turneur of KARK, and George Jarrett of Talk Business and Politics. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Each will have 2 minutes to respond to a question. Rebuttals are limited to a minute. At the conclusion of the debate, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Now, the order of opening statements, questioning, rebuttals, and closing statements was determined prior to the broadcast by a drawing in which the candidates or their representative participated. Our timekeeper this hour is Cindy Gamble of AETN. And with that, our first opening statement tonight, Mr. Griffin.
First of all, thank you for having me here and sponsoring this debate. When I ran for Lieutenant Governor 4 years ago, I said that I wanted to work hard to help Arkansas compete and grow jobs. And that meant we needed to make changes in government. And you know, for me, this is not just something that I do as an elected official, it's personal. I have 3 young children. I have an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 9-month-old. And so what I never want to hear from them when they get older and start into the workforce, I never want to hear them say, "Daddy, I would love to stay in Arkansas and live near you, but I can't, because those jobs aren't available here. Those careers aren't available here." I never want to hear that from them. And so every day I get up looking for ways that Arkansas can better compete against not only neighboring states, states all over this country, and against other countries. What does compete mean? Well, it means a more competitive, pro-growth tax code. It means a leaner, smarter state government that gives taxpayers more value for their taxpayer dollar. People work hard for their dollars. We need to make sure that state government isn't wasting it. And no one can look you in the eye and say that it isn't. So every day I get up and try to confront that challenge. I work for more choice in education. I work for better highways and infrastructure and better quality of life. I said that's what I was going to do, and that's what I have done. Thank you for letting me be a part of this today.
Mr. Griffin, thank you. Mr. Gilbert, 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I am Frank Gilbert. I'm not a Democrat, not a Republican, and I'm not for sale. It's important to make that last distinction because, frankly, 2018 is the election of corruption. We know how many state senators and state representatives have been indicted or convicted for corruption. We know that the investigation continues at both the federal and state level, and we heard most recently that White County is embroiled in a scandal of its own. That corruption comes from a sense of entitlement. Politicians in this state for too long have not been held accountable by their parties or by anyone else for their conduct. Now it's up to the federal courts to hold them accountable. But you also have an option. As a voter, you can demand accountability of your elected officials as well. It is difficult in Arkansas because of 100 General Assembly seats available this election, more than half are uncontested. That's a type of corruption that to me is much more dangerous than stealing a few $1 million. The politicians of Arkansas have stolen our choice. They have taken away from us the ability to hold them accountable at the election. If we can allow that to continue, the corruption will continue and become worse. You have an option. You have an alternative. Sometimes it's scary to exercise that option, but the truth is you can vote for a libertarian this year. And if you're going to vote for a libertarian, the least scary one you can vote for is the candidate for lieutenant governor. After all, what can I mess up besides Tim's cakewalk to the governorship in 4 years?
Mr. Gilbert, thank you. Mr. Bland, 2 minutes.
Thank you. First, I want to thank God for giving me this opportunity to stand before you today. I thank my family for supporting me in my candidacy. I'm a father of 8 children, 6 girls, 2 boys. My lovely wife and my mother are also here today to support me. I know what it means to have family values. I know what it is to be an Arkansan. I was born in Fayetteville, Arkansas, raised right here in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm a product of the public school system, Little Rock public school system. I've went to Arkansas schools to get my bachelor's degree and my master's and my doctorate degrees. I know what it's like to work hard, to make a difference, to make changes that is desperately needed. And our state is suffering right now. Our state needs representation rather than someone that has hidden agendas. And at this point, it's time for a new generation of leadership in our government office. We've heard for the past number of years all of these empty promises. Well, it's time to go to the polls. It's time to vote. It's time for someone to be for the people, by the people, that is for Arkansas, that is for health care, that's for education, that's for jobs, that's literally willing to support livable wages. And until we start standing up for what we believe in, and until we start standing up for the citizens of Arkansas, we're going to stay in the same rut. And right now, I believe people that have been in office thus far, their resume speaks for itself. So if you want a change, if you want a better life for your family, for your children, I say go to the polls November 2nd, October 22nd, early voting. But go to the polls and let's make a difference. Thank you.
Mr. Bland, thank you. Our first question tonight comes from Rusty Turner, and it goes to Mr. Gilbert.
Mr. Gilbert, perhaps the most important duty of the lieutenant governor is to step in for the governor if should the need arise. What have you done to prepare for that possibility?
I have been a citizen of Arkansas and I've paid attention. I read the news, I keep up with the broadcast media. I am aware of what's happening in Arkansas through the good graces of officers like yours and the others at the panel. I believe that the state of Arkansas has been poorly governed for many years. And that's why I would like to be part of the governance process, is to see if we can't begin to change that. Business Insider, one of those type of publications, recently placed us 50th of 51 and as far as economic growth. While the governor's touting 70,000 new jobs, an unbiased independent group is saying that while the rest of the nation is flourishing in a business climate that is positive, we have zero growth. If we didn't have Northwest Arkansas, I don't know how far below we'd be below zero, but it is frightening to me where our state has come. When I first became aware of politics in my teens, we said, thank God for Mississippi, because Mississippi always ranked lower than we did in these rankings of states for positive things. And now, years of mismanagement, years of corruption, and we say, thank God for the District of Columbia now, I guess.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Griffin.
Well, first of all, I have traveled and continue to travel to all 75 counties. So I have gotten to know not just a part of the state, but people and the way they make their living, the way they live their lives all over the state, from top to bottom, from east to west. And I would also say that as Lieutenant Governor, I have worked very closely with Governor Hutchinson on a number of issues, whether it be education, leading his review of Common Core, working on a review of DHS. I've seen the problems with DHS. Many still persist, and we're still working to solve those. The governor and his administration is. I've worked within the legislature. I've also serving on as the vice chair of the Transformation Advisory Board. We've taken a comprehensive look at state government to see what we can do better, how we can spend taxpayer dollars more wisely. Throughout this process, I have gotten to see and learn more and more about how government works. Now, no state government stands independently today. They worked very closely and depend upon the federal government. I think my time in Congress helps me with that. I've been in the private sector. I've been a federal prosecutor. And let us not forget that a governor, if called to be the governor, you are also commander-in-chief of the National Guard. You are the commander. You are in charge of the troops unless they are federalized. I have 22 years in the military. I served in Iraq, and I am currently serving as Lieutenant Colonel. My position is in the Undersecretary of Defense's office in the Pentagon. I believe that all of that experience together prepares me well.
Mr. Bland.
Yes, as serving in the capacity of governor, if that should arise, first and foremost, the citizens of Arkansas should always be put first. Getting to know the people is actually getting into the community, getting involved with the people in the community, going door to door, sitting right there beside them, hearing their problems, understanding their needs and their desperate desires for change in our state is first and foremost, should be number one on any governmental official's priority list. Yes, we can always hear from candidates that say that they're supporting other government officials. Well, we have issues. We need solutions. We don't need just looking at the issue. An issue is an issue. Let's find a solution. Let's create solutions to problems. Also, let's take a look at our education system. Let's take a look at all of the different people in our state. Our citizens need support. Our teachers, our hardworking blue-collar workers, our small business owners, all of these different people in our state need support. And as Lieutenant Governor, we should be able to advocate for the citizens of Arkansas, not just say, hey, during election season, I'm here for you. No, every year, all 365 days, you should be working for the citizens of Arkansas. And as Lieutenant Governor, and if I should ever have to become governor, I will continuously be transparent and accountable for the citizens of Arkansas.
Well, thank you. Mr. Gilbert, you have 1 minute for rebuttal.
Probably the most interesting job I've had in a fairly varied career was as the mayor of the town of Tull. Tull is a tiny little town in Grant County, and the outgoing mayor told me as he welcomed me to the job that whiskey was for drinking and water was for fighting over. For 8 years, we fought over water. You cannot imagine the degree of anger and bile that rises in a local water fight. I cannot imagine anything in the state legislature or anywhere else that would be more difficult and more personally trying than a local water fight between a Grant County community and the cities of Benton and Saline County. I think I'm ready to take another challenge.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nuer has this next question, and it goes first to Mr. Griffin.
A number of former state lawmakers, lobbyists, and agency officials have been accused or convicted of taking bribes and kickbacks in a wide-ranging public corruption scandal involving Medicaid dollars and state grants. Authorities say more indictments and charges are expected. Since your role as Lieutenant Governor also makes you the presider over the Senate, what do you think of the Chamber's work to overhaul its ethics rules, and what other changes do you think need to be made?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think we need more stringent, more open disclosure, and that is a part of what they're doing. There's no question about it. I have personal experience with federal disclosure and some of the federal rules, and I think there are some lessons to be learned there. I also think that a lot of the rules that are only going to apply to the Senate, we should look at expanding them to all constitutional officers, including myself. Happy to comply with that. I will say this. We have got to get away from calling things ethics reform, thinking that we've done something because we've passed it, and patting ourselves on the back. What I'm referring to is what I call the John Woods ethics reform. The last ethics reform that passed was actually written by, in large part, a gentleman who's in jail right now. So, yes, we need to make changes, but the type of changes that we make are also important. For example, that ethics law banned a group where you go speak from giving a bottle of water. It makes no sense. None of the people are in jail because they took a bottle of water. But that's the sort of law we have. I think that there were all sorts of problems with that law that became a ballot measure and did in fact pass. I think the people of Arkansas were misled to a large extent. I would say this, as president of the Senate, I'm a former federal prosecutor. I've been a federal prosecutor on 3 different occasions, if I count properly, and an Army prosecutor. These gentlemen don't walk up to me and say, hey, I just want you to know, you can't see in my checking account, but I'm stealing from people. They don't tell me that because they know I would go straight to the FBI. But I can tell you, when people get a hint of this stuff, it shouldn't stay within the Capitol. They should report it to the federal law enforcement and state law enforcement.
Mr. Griffin, thank you. Mr. Bland, 2 minutes.
Yes, ethics reform. First of all, if you're going to be held accountable, if you're going to be a representative of the citizens of our state, first and foremost, you need to uphold the laws of our state. We have a constitution, we have a state constitution, we have a United States Constitution. We should follow the laws and regulations of our state. Many people can come up and say, hey, I've held all of these different positions. Holding a position does not mean that you actually have done the job. There are many people in our state right now holding positions that are not doing anything for the citizens of Arkansas. They're just holding a seat. They're holding a spot, an office that the taxpayers are paying for, but are not getting results. So I believe that the citizens should hold every political official that they're voting for accountable. And in order to do that, we have to vote. We have to let them know that their job is not something that they are actually have the privilege of having because of who they are, but because the citizens decided to put them there. And the citizens have the right to put them out of that position right now in November. And I hope that more political officials will find out that it's time for ethics to be number one in our political arena.
Ms. Bland, thank you. Mr. Gilbert, 2 minutes.
I'm glad you brought up corruption and ethics. It is the hallmark of this election. The Senate has brought shame on itself and its members and on this state, and to expect them to write rules, new rules, to replace the old rules they wrote is just silly. To expect them to pass laws that will be effective and efficient in rooting out corruption is just as silly. I know a couple of state senators who tried. They introduced legislation that would have had a meaningful impact on the kind of corruption that we're suffering right now. And both of them were primaried and lost an election in the Republican primary because the governor campaigned against them, gave money to their opponents, actively sought to seek them to lose their seat in the Senate. It may be because they cheated him at dominoes. I don't know why they did that, but I know what the result of it was, and the result looks ugly. It is time for someone unimpacted by politics to take ethics on, to do the real work that will keep real men and women from committing real sins and crimes, stealing money from the people they have been elected to represent. Until we do that, we will continue to play the game of, I supported ethics 2 years ago, but now all of a sudden it's a phony ethics, and we need the same people who wrote the last phony ethics rules to write new ones. We can do the same thing over and over and over again if we wish to. If we want to change, we're going to have to seek change. I hope you will do that in this election.
Mr. Griffin, you have 1 minute.
As I indicated earlier, I agree with what Mr. Gilbert said about some of the old ethics laws. I think that they were horrible then, they're horrible now. I do think we need more stringent ethics laws. I would point out, though, none of the people are in jail because there weren't laws. They're in jail because there were laws. They did not follow the laws. You can add more laws, but there's no guarantee that they will follow those laws. That's why, and I'm all for strengthening the laws, but that is why the first and foremost responsibility is to elect people of integrity. I also agree with Dr. Bland here that people who are elected to office should be working all the time. Anybody that knows me, I work to a fault. I never stop working, and I never stop working for the people of Arkansas. Ask anybody who knows Tim Griffin. And I stood on the stage a few years ago and gave you my cell phone, and I'm going to do it again. My cell phone's 501-837-5190. People have used it. There's never an excuse to get in touch with Tim Griffin, your Lieutenant Governor, because you have my cell phone. Thank you.
Mr. Jared has the next question, and it goes first to Mr. Bland.
Mr. Bland, what's your opinion of the work requirements that have recently been added to the Arkansas Works program, which makes health insurance available to low-income residents of the state?
Well, to start off my answer to that question is there are many people that need health insurance. They have difficulties getting to where they need to be. They're having to pay, in today's time, Uber and Lyft and all these different things to get them where they have to go. So if they already have issues with their income to even get out the house, why would we further their issue by making it difficult for them to even get health insurance? You will have to, they don't have internet access. Every county in this state, not every county has internet access. Not every person in our state has the ability to go out and meet these work requirements. So my question is for our current government officials, why are we making it more difficult to have a livable life in our state? If anything, we should be supporting our citizens to have a fun, long, healthy life. And right now, why should we take away health care? That's their life, that's their health. They should have support from our government officials, not removing the quality of life because they can't afford their prescription drugs, because they cannot make it to go register online or go register at a facility to say, hey, I'm working or I'm meeting the requirements that you need me to meet in order to get your support and your assistance. Well, I voted for you to get your support and your assistance. If you did not want to support and assist me, you shouldn't have ran to say that you would support and assist me. That's the way I feel about that.
Mr. Gilbert, 2 minutes.
The problem with what Dr. Bland just said is it only looks at half of the equation. I too have great sympathy for those who are in difficult circumstances, and I am willing with my tax money and any other way I can to assist those people who are in legitimate need. The other side of the equation is somebody pays for it. That somebody is always the taxpayer of Arkansas. The state of Arkansas has not done a good job in identifying who is in dire need and who is a lazy bum. I have members of my family who are lazy bums. They don't want to work. They don't want to do anything. They want somebody to support them. I don't think there are a great number of people like that on our welfare system and receiving the subsidy that you described, but there are some. And as long as we are taking money from hard-working Arkansans through taxes, I think it only reasonable to give them some assurance that their help is going to those who are truly in need and not to a lazy bum.
Mr. Griffin.
Well, first and foremost, I support the work requirement. This is something that the governor has implemented. I think it is eminently reasonable when you are spending my dollars and your dollars, hard-working taxpayers' dollars. I think it is eminently reasonable to have a work requirement. Now, there are exceptions to it, and those exceptions are being utilized, invoked by many people. There have been some back and forth, fine-tuning, if you will, making sure that some people who may not have internet access have a way of understanding the rules of the work requirement. This is not something that I have direct oversight over, but I am familiar with what this initiative, and I think it's a good one. I think it's reasonable. And I think that like us, the governor cares for people who are in need, and he's demonstrated that. I mean, to suggest otherwise is ridiculous. But the fiscal sustainability, the ability to afford the Medicaid expansion is an issue, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on. When I was a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, I personally took an interest in this because of our state's role. And I can tell you there is no dedicated funding stream at the federal level to fund Medicaid expansion. So the possibility of the federal government pulling back on the funds is a real one. And that would leave us in dire straits. So I think it is responsible and reasonable for us to be looking for ways to make this more affordable because of the fiscal pressures that are inherently involved in the expansion of Medicaid.
Mr. Bland, 1 minute.
Yes. First off, I have no desire whatsoever to ride the coattails of any other candidate. To not know the needs of the citizens of Arkansas says a whole lot in itself. For us not to be able to actually go out in the community and see who actually needs our support, it's right here in our face every day. We go, we ride in our cars, we see on the street corners, we go to the different educational facilities, we go every single place in our communities. The answer is right there. Why our government officials have no clue on who needs our support and our assistance baffles me. But I do know that I'm going to be for the people, by the people, and I'm going to stand with the people every step of the way as Lieutenant Governor.
Mr. Bland, thanks very much. We go now to Mr. Noor for the next question. It starts with Mr. Gilbert.
The Arkansas Supreme Court just ruled earlier today that voter ID can remain on the November ballot. In some of these other debates that has come up, and candidates from a lot of different sides have come together on this, saying that it does seem to be the will of the people. But there are still voters out there who believe it's wrong and unconstitutional. So what side of the debate are you on, and why?
I have a bit of a personal quandary with that, because when the first election I ever won, I ran for coroner of Grant County as a Republican, and I was unopposed, and I nearly lost Prattsville. The River 2 precinct came in and reported 89 votes for Gilbert, 67 for the Democrat nominee. You cannot imagine the surprise of everybody there because there was no Democrat nominee. There are unscrupulous people who will do anything they can to turn an election in the favor of themselves or their candidate. It is distasteful, but it is necessary to protect yourself from people like that, whether it's the sheriff of River One Precinct in Grant County or Vladimir Putin himself. There are things people have to do to ensure their safety and the integrity of their elections. I'm not disappointed with what has happened.
Mr. Griffin, 2 minutes.
I support voter ID. I like to take a common sense approach to this particular issue, like all issues. You know, I have numerous IDs in my pocket, and I have to show them, whether it's getting onto Camp Robinson or whether it's going into the Capitol, if I'm going to use the door pass to go through. If you buy, I don't smoke, but if you buy tobacco products, you have to show an ID. If you buy alcohol, unless you look old like me, in most cases, you would have to show an ID. I mean, this is not a big hurdle for exercising a precious constitutional right, it seems to me. And now, in the environment we live in, there are so many avenues for people to get IDs. An ID does not mean a military ID like I have, a driver's license like I have. It can, but there are IDs that you can get from the state. Cities are giving out IDs. Heck, cities are giving out IDs to people who aren't even U.S. citizens now. They're giving them out to just about anyone, whether you are an American or not. So getting an ID is not a particularly difficult hurdle, it seems to me. It's a reasonable thing to ask. And there always is a mechanism if there, for some reason, is a legitimate reason for you not to have one. But it seems reasonable. Also, I'd like to say, in terms of knowing what's going on, I don't know who these people are that don't know what's going on around Arkansas, but I know that I'm on the board of Our House, a nonprofit that helps the working homeless. I'm also on the board of Pathway to Freedom.
You're beyond 2 minutes now, Mr. Griffin. So I have to call time.
Those
finish.
give
if
me
you can
experience.
finish quickly, sir. Go ahead.
I'm through.
Okay, Mr. Bland, 2
Yes.
minutes.
First and foremost, we don't need to go back in time with our politics or with our government. If there is an element out there that is going to suppress the voters' ability to voice their opinion, voice who should represent them in office, it does not need to be in place. However, I will always be an advocate to enforce the law. So if the voters vote that we must have this in place, by all means, I will support the law. I have no problems with supporting the law. But I do not personally support anything that will suppress the voices of the citizens of Arkansas. People in Arkansas should be able to speak their mind. They should be able to follow the Constitution. You have the right to freedom of speech. And your vote is a way of exercising that right. So why should we make it, once again, another issue, making it more of a hurdle than it is for you to get support and help? So as far as I'm concerned, we need to support the people and stop trying to find a way to push them away or suppress them.
Mr. Gilbert, 1 minute.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Bland, for that reminder. You run as a libertarian, you do your own opposition research, and in doing that, I became familiar with the term caging votes. Never heard of it before. It is the opposite end of the spectrum of what I spoke about a while ago with a sheriff in a poll trying to steal votes. It is politicians trying to inhibit voters. And that cuts pretty close to home for some of us, because some of us have been charged with and may have been guilty of caging voters in Florida to keep a certain type of voter, Democrats ostensibly, minorities probably, from being able to vote. And in the process of doing that, they scooped up not only the Democrats they were looking for, but also some American heroes who were serving in Iraq and Iran at the time. And I would hate to see that continue as well.
Mr. Jarrett has the next question, and it goes first to Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Griffin, it appears that Arkansas voters will be allowed to vote on casino gambling for the first time. What is your position on issue 4?
First of all, I'd like to say that whatever the law is, whether we're dealing with voter ID, the ability to vote, whatever that law is, I think that people should comply and comport with the law and the Constitution. On this particular issue, I am not a big gambler myself, but I believe that I prefer the setup that we have now, where you have that primarily focused on Oaklawn, Hot Springs, and the track over in West Memphis. I tend to think that that is probably a better path for the state. I know there are opposing views on that, but I tend to think that's where I'm going to end up on that particular issue. I will say that since I've got another minute, I'll go back to what I was saying previously. One of the things that I will tell you that we have got to look at growing good-paying jobs in this state, continue to do that, not just jobs, but careers. We want jobs that can sustain someone over a lifetime, where they can continue training and they can move up the ladder. And that is going to, in large part, depend upon STEM education. Science, technology, engineering, and math. I'm a big advocate for STEM education. I'm an advocate not only publicly but with my own children, because certainly jobs of any sort are welcome. But if we can get good paying, sustainable, high-tech jobs, those are the jobs of the future, and those are the ones that we need to be preparing young people for. And for the older people, maybe my age, we're going to have to continue to reskill and retool. But the future to transform the state will be with our young people in the STEM fields.
Mr. Bland, 2 minutes.
Yes. Casino gambling. Right now, I'm on the fence on this issue because I really don't see the structure of how this is going to support the citizens and the state of Arkansas. We're bringing in casinos, but there has been no layout of the support of the educational system, the support of how we're going to help our roadways, to help with our infrastructure throughout the state, our technological inabilities. There's no structured plan that has been put in place to give citizens an opportunity to find out how supporting this will benefit. It's just putting another facility in Arkansas that is taking up space where we should be more or less concerned with how we're going to help the citizens. For some reason, our government officials always want to look at a bunch of other avenues. It's like they want to do magic tricks. You know, you're being a magician. You show one hand but hide the other. We can't do that. We need to be supporting the citizens of Arkansas. Citizens and the people of Arkansas should come first, not trying to build up a big bunch of corporations that's basically filling up our state, and the citizens are getting the short end of it. We should always remember educational support, healthcare support, livable wages, transparency, accountability, civil rights, voting rights. All people should matter in every possible way. And until we figure out what we can do for the people first, these other elements should be put on the side.
Mr. Gilbert, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to vote against it. I'm not a prude. I've gone to Shreveport, I go to Tunica from time to time. I enjoy my time there. But the voters of Arkansas have bought this pig twice. We've already got 2 guaranteed monopolies printing money for the owners, and very little benefit falling to me or anybody I know. We also voted in the lottery. We were going to save education in Arkansas, and we have about as piddling a payout as any state that has the lottery. Somehow, Arkansas always finds a way to reward those who don't need more money when it comes time to hand out these franchises. And now we're asked to pick 4 winners. 4 people, 4 places are going to have a monopoly and almost the right to print money. I would much prefer if we let the markets decide those sort of things. I don't mind there being casinos anywhere the people want them. But I know, having been blessed to move to Jefferson County recently, that Pine Bluff probably does not need a casino. It's got problems enough already. If the people of Jefferson County decide otherwise, and they want to throw those dice and see if they come up a winner, that's fine. But let's not put it in the Constitution. Let's let local Arkansans make a local decision about who they want doing what in their counties. I hope we've again turned down these phony casinos. We did 2 years ago. I hope we will again. And I hope someday, if we're going to have casinos, that we just say, let the best casino owners in the world come here and try their hand in Arkansas.
Governor, you have 1 minute.
I want to focus on transformation. The casino issue raises the broader issue of how do we fund things. And I believe that we tax Arkansans too much. I think we tax too much. I think we spend too much. Now, doesn't mean it's spent wisely. It's not all spent wisely. I believe there are a lot of funds that can be used for the right thing, for the right priorities, if we find savings and efficiency in government. Other states have done it, and it'll work. Let me tell you 4 reasons why we must transform state government. Transformation is the opposite of tweaking at the edges. It's big, bold change. Number 1, we have a moral obligation not to take the taxpayer dollars and waste it. So we must be looking to transform. Number 2, we can provide services for the less fortunate, the needy more. Number 3, we'll save money, which we can use for a better tax code and for investments, such as highways and infrastructure. And number 4, other states are doing it, so we have to compete.
Mr. Turner has the next question, and it goes first to Mr. Bland.
Mr. Bland, we often hear from state officials that our highway needs outpace our financial resources. Would you favor the use of money from the state's general fund to supplement the state highway and transportation department's funding through fuel taxes?
Well, I believe that supporting funding that's coming from different areas shouldn't always have to come from the general fund. There are other avenues that we can use in our state, which we have laid out many times. The Democratic Party has laid out, Mr. Henderson is running for governor. There are many avenues that we could do to actually support the financial system in our state, other than taking it more money from the taxpayers. We have other opportunities right here in our state that we're not utilizing. But our current officials, once again, want to continue to use taxpayer money to continue to fund big name corporations, to fill their pockets, to host various events, to have what we call a heavy pocket tea party. Whoever has the most money, that's who call the shots. We should not be in an actual community that allows that. And so why are we constantly trying to take more money from the taxpayers? Let's find other avenues than reaching more deeper into the taxpayers' pockets. So no, why should we take it from the general fund? We have other things that we need that general fund for, that for some reason other government officials feel like we're in such a great shape as a state, but yet we got people holding signs on the street corner saying, I will work for food, that were also veterans that fought for our country. So why are we not supporting those people? Thank you.
Mr. Gilbert, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. When you think of all the things that Arkansas's government does, roads is at or near the top of the list. Of course, we need to do anything we can to improve our infrastructure and particularly our roads. At the same time, taking the money from general funds looks like opening the wrong trap door. The problem that I see is not how much money we're spending on roads, it's how we spend it. The Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department is frightening. I don't believe there is a single legislator of any party who would cross one of those commissioners in the Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department. They have a fiefdom and they have power and authority that nobody in the state of Arkansas to have over that much money and over such an indispensable product as our infrastructure. The governor has some influence, he appoints them, but they're appointed for such long terms that they're not too worried about who the next governor is, whether or not they will get an appointment. Those things are bought and sold decades in advance. If we had a sane structure, if the legislature had not abdicated its authority, if the people that we elect to represent us in spending our money actually made the decisions about spending money, I think it would be a lot better. I remember before the Mack-Blackwell Amendment, and I remember how the politicians took it on the chin, what an awful job they had done on roads in Arkansas. I, for one, yearn for the days before the Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department became the king of the road.
Mr. Griffin, 2 minutes.
Mr. Gilbert makes a good point in pointing out that the governor and the legislature, they do not directly control highways and infrastructure in this state the way they do in other states because of the commission that's been set up. But the question goes to general revenue funds. The problem with using no general revenue funds is that we often have a situation where we're uncertain whether the matching funds will be available so that we can get the federal highway funds. And in some instances, we've had to count on the governor using some of his funds. So the problem with that is the unpredictability. There is no sort of foundational amount of money in general revenue that guarantees, not that all the highways and infrastructure are funded from general revenue, but because no one's discussing that possibility, but some foundational amount that can be used to provide some certainty on matching funds and sort of the base amount of money needed for maintenance and operations. I do not believe that we have to take away from funds currently spent. I believe that years of transformation can show us savings that could be used to put a line item in with no additional tax money, none, that would provide a foundational amount in general revenue to help when there's matching funds available, et cetera, so that it's not always this emergency because we don't have the funds available. So I think in theory, that's something that ought to be looked at because I believe 34 states in the District of Columbia use that approach to get some certainty in funding highways and infrastructure.
Rebuttal time, Mr. Bland, you have 1 minute.
Absolutely. Well, as a native of Arkansas and as a person that drives on these roads on a daily basis, I'm tired of actually hitting these big holes in the streets. I'm also with the rest of a lot of the other citizens that every time you look up, we're having to go different detoured ways to get where we're trying to go. because there's constant construction going on our roads, constant. And then I done went through many tires just to drive on the roads here in our state. But ultimately, said all that to say this, financially, why doesn't our government officials know from a plan, putting together a plan of action of what we need as a state? There's no reason why we should have a just-in-case fund. We should already know what the state needs and what we need to do to make it better for us.
Mr. Bland, thank you very much. We are now at the portion of tonight's event for closing statements. Again, as was determined immediately prior to the broadcast, Mr. Gilbert will have the first close. Sir?
Thank you. Again, not a Democrat, not a Republican, not for sale. Think of that when you vote this November. The state of Arkansas is caught in a quagmire. The swamp that we're in is not the voters' fault. It is the fault of the political elite who have gamed the system by gerrymandering their districts, by passing legislation favorable to them, their friends, and their party. And the result is a political class that is unaccountable. Until the political class is accountable at the elections every 2 years, we will continue to fight a losing battle against corruption. Human nature will bring us some corruption. It is the nature of the beast. What we're facing now, though, is corruption that is encouraged, that is cultivated, that is prepared, and that it pays off, just not for you and I. I was thrilled to hear that the Lieutenant Governor may be preparing to endorse me when he said he was for transformative change, something big and something bold. Friends, there is nothing you can do November 6th that will be more transformative, that will send a bigger, bolder message to the entrenched politicians who have run Arkansas for far too long than vote for Frank Gilbert for Lieutenant Governor. That will send a message the likes of which this state has never seen. I encourage you, vote for Frank Gilbert for Lieutenant Governor. Again, it's a safe vote, it's a safe bet. All I can do is derail the Timmy train.
Mr. Gilbert, thank you. Mr. Griffin, 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks again for joining us. I have enjoyed the time with my colleagues here. They're great guys. In the few moments I've gotten to know them, I will not be endorsing them, but I have enjoyed this, and I thank you for your time. I want to thank the people of Arkansas for allowing me to serve as your Lieutenant Governor. I believe if you go back to 2014, look at what I said on the stage, look at what I said during that campaign, I believe I have stayed absolutely true to every bit of that. And I have said that I was going to be the most accessible Lieutenant Governor, and I continue to be. If you didn't catch it the first time, my cell phone is 501-837-5190. I get up every day to make a better Arkansas so that we can grow jobs, and not just jobs, but careers, and compete. For me, it's personal. It's about your kids and grandkids, but it's also about John, Mary Catherine, and Charlotte Ann. I want them to be able to stay here their entire life if they want to, pursuing their dreams. So every day I get up and I work to make sure Arkansas is more attractive for people to move here and for companies to bring jobs and careers. It's been the honor to serve you. I will continue to work on what I have started. I am working with the governor on a number of things. We've made a lot of progress, but we've got a long way to go, and there's a lot more work to be done. And I assure you, I will use every ounce of my energy every day. I will go to sleep exhausted every night working for you. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Arkansas. And God bless America.
Mr. Griffin, thank you. Mr. Bland, you have 2 minutes.
Right. Thank you, first of all, to our panelists for sitting in tonight with us, giving us the various questions. I truly appreciate that. AETN for allowing us to come in. My fellow candidates here, appreciate you all for standing here with us and going at it back and forth about some great topics. But first and foremost, voting for Anthony Bland on November 6th means a fighter for the state of Arkansas. I believe that we should have stable health care. Our children should go to stable schools without feeling any type of insecurities. Our teachers should not feel that they should continue to be the lowest paid workers in the country. I feel that we should always fight every day for a livable wage. I feel that we should go back to our main motto of this country, being united. That's the first word in our country's name, the United States of America. But for some reason, there's constant separation and division being blasted in all aspects of our state and our country. We need to get away from that. We need to reunite our country. And in order to do that, we need to end corruption in government. A lot of our current government officials have other people putting various funds in their pocket. So they're going to continue to support their ideas and their initiatives. But once again, you voted for them, hold them accountable. And that's what I want you to do with me. When you vote for me on November 6th, Anthony Bland, you hold me accountable. I want to be transparent. Don't just call me, come see me. Look me up and let's talk. I'm an Arkansan and I'm for Arkansas. Thank you and God bless you.
Mr. Bland, thank you very much. A special thanks, of course, to our panel of journalists tonight, which provided our question, and obviously to our candidates. Ladies and gentlemen, the Libertarian, Democratic, and Republican nominees for Lieutenant Governor of Arkansas. Thank you very much for being with us here at the Reynolds Center and at home, and we'll see you next time.
Major funding for Election 2018 AETN debates is provided by AARP Arkansas.